Hello and welcome back to Ray's Gaming, and check this out. This is on Ultimate Vault Hunter level 5. We got the Ripper Queen here and she's gone. This is the endgame, true endgame version of the Ricochet build, which has become so popular for Rafa. Obviously we covered the concept for your leveling version of it, getting you to 50 and getting into the endgame. But this, by comparison, is just kind of the maximized concept. Like, how far can we push this concept? What do we need to rework? So compared to that build, we're using 2 weapons at once in some cases. We're swapping our Capstone around based on what we're dealing with. There are skill changes, there are specialization changes, and important management of all of the different buffs and tools that you have to maximize your output. So we've got a lot to look at here. But obviously, you can see that on the hardest mode that currently exists in the game, I'm cleaning through all of the bosses. And if you're wondering about mob clear and stuff, it's basically just one-shotting next to everything. It's incredibly satisfying and fun. So this is the best version of the Ricochet build, maximized as far as I can push it for the moment. Let's start with the all-important topic of what weapon do you use? Last time we were looking at this, the Rainbow Vomit Shotgun, which has color spray, providing you 3 different element or statuses, but it's very important at least one of those is incendiary. This is still an incredibly good option and one that I recommend you still use. In fact, let me give you an example. With this setup, you need to be max shield. While your energy shield is full, you've got increased fire rate, movement speed, but all importantly, you're getting an extra bit of regen for your ammo, which ties into the main gun that we're using in a lot of the footage. If you're having to trade, or you've taken damage, or maybe you're just against something with a really high shield, and there's no mobs around to benefit from the other weapon, well then, I'm actually still using the Rainbow Vomit Shotgun. There's plenty of examples where I use it for a bit of a fight, then swap to the other one. So if you just have the Rainbow Vomit and a great roll and option, it's fine to use. And in fact, I'm swapping between these 2 weapons, sometimes using this shotgun anyway. But the other shotgun is of course Hot Slugger. We've been dabbling with this for quite a lot of our builds that you're going to see on the channel because it's incredibly potent thanks to Blazing Barrel. On kills, you get the stacking buff that gives you 30% increased damage. It lasts a nice 10 seconds, so up to 90% additional damage to everything you've got. Importantly, it's also a Jakobs weapon, so it leans into the whole ricocheting projectiles concept. The problem with this gun is that you have one shot, then you're out, and you have to reload. Now there's an important trick to this, because we're going to talk about shields and what you can consider using. There's 2 options that I really like. Important trick for using this gun then. If you're having to reload, don't let it fire and then reload automatically. There's a long pause before it kind of comprehends it needs to reload and then reloads. Instead, immediately press the reload button after you fire. And you can see that it instantly reloads after you fire. So while you're going, you're just pressing the reload button here and there, and it makes a major difference for your DPS. However, of course, we're looking for a solution to this because there's lots of reasons why we want to keep firing consistently, and importantly, staying in an aimed down sight state. So we're using a shield that's basically giving us some ammo regen, preventing that reload, meaning we can keep going with this weapon most of the time, which is pretty nice. So those are the 2 weapons that I'm using and why and when. If there's any ads available, I'm always using Hot Slugger for the Blazing Barrel stacking. If there's no ads, and I can't help but take damage to lose my shield, then I go for Rainbow Vomit. Now, I did say this is still a Ricochet build, and how can we push that concept as far as possible? We got to talk about the whole elephant in the room, this weird topic that came up after we covered it the first time. The idea that Jakobs critical hits are not going to be ricocheting projectiles that count as indirect projectiles. And there's a lot of discussion that's happened over the last couple of days, in fact, about this concept. I've seen so many people claiming that Jakobs ricocheting projectiles are not indirect, where I've also seen so many people claiming the opposite. So the best example I can give you to sort of say that it is Errant Spark. All indirect projectiles deal bonus incendiary damage. If the indirect projectile already has incendiary damage, you double that bonus. So let's take this gun right here that currently has no fire damage on it. So the only way that I'm going to get fire damage from this gun is through Errant Spark, which means the indirect projectiles are getting a bonus of this incendiary damage. Therefore, these ricochets must count as indirect projectiles, otherwise that wouldn't work. So as I go up to this guy and shoot him and we slow it down, you can see that there's fire damage occurring as I fire this gun, which means there's ricochets which are counting as indirect, which are getting buffed with fire because they're indirect projectiles. At very least, that is the case for this gun. It's a bit harder to check with a gun that already has fire damage on it. Really what would happen there is that you're going to see fire damage with bigger numbers, and so you can check for that. Ultimately in this build, you're getting plenty of benefits from ricocheting projectiles, and indirect versions of projectiles are getting lots of bonus to their damage. This seems to be triggering indirect projectiles, so it should be working. If for some reason it isn't, as some people claim it's weapon by weapon basis, like it works on some and not on others, it appears to be working in this setup. Worst case scenario, you're just getting some extra ricochets that aren't getting big damage bonuses in some cases from the shots of your guns. But let's move on. What I'm going to do is talk about the skill tree and how it links to a lot of the equipment we're running and why. Starting with the skill tree of the many changes I've made. First up, we have 5 points into CTR. This gives you 25% increased gun damage. So we're dealing more damage with our gun, which is great, but importantly, our action skill, the Peacebreaker cannons, are getting damage improvements from that. This is because of our specialization. I am a gun. Action skill damage now benefits from increased gun damage, 50% of increases to gun damage. So by stacking gun damage, you're also increasing your Peacekeeper cannon damage. Your Peacekeeper cannon is indirect projectiles, possible ricochet, loads of stacking concepts there. So by increasing that gun damage, it's having compounding interest, as it were. The other option is, of course, improving your fire rate, which is really nice, because the Peacebreaker cannons also get that. But the problem with primarily using Hot Slugger is it's got one shot in it, so improving its fire rate doesn't really go the distance how I'd like. So that's why I've made that choice. The other option here is Shield Barriest, which is actually a viable choice if you find yourself struggling with maintaining max shield because you keep getting hit by everything. But we still take the familiar passives here, where your critical hits are going to restore your action skill duration, very important, so that we can maintain our action skill as long as possible. Next we have Instincto as the augment, same as before. Increased crit strike chance for them, which is amazing. Press it again and it drains a bit quicker, but then you double that crit chance and even crit damage, which is obviously very potent. We're still running Maestro though, to increase the skill damage of our Peacebreaker cannons, their indirect damage, the ricocheting, and so on. And we have 3 points into El Valiente, because this is increasing your damage from all sources, and the more shield you have, the greater the bonus. If you're at max capacity shield, you double the bonus. So it's a lot of value if you can keep your shield full. This brings us down onto the left side of the tree, which is familiar, the full asymmetric warfare, giving us increases to all indirect projectile damage, such as our Peacebreaker cannons. We have Errant Spark, giving indirect projectiles bonus fire damage, and then doubling that if it already had fire damage. Lateral plinking, of course. Indirect projectiles might ricochet, which sometimes causes that funny chain reaction where it absolutely bursts a target down. And right now, I still have double auto shot Capstone. Critical hits always ricochet. And now you have these shotguns, so you want to play up close. In my experience, this is just so much more bursty than your other options, and is unbelievably effective when you start dealing flesh damage in particular. So if you're dealing with a boss that has a lot of flesh damage, my god is this strong. And it's what I have on by default. However, how hard is it for me to change this build to a more status focused one? Let's say we're dealing with a boss that has a big shield that I'd benefit from a lot of shock for. Well then, it's literally I just turn on the Capstone, and just like that, I've now got Beam Team instead of the shotguns. It's that easy. That's the change that I make. So you will see in some footage, I am in fact using Beam Team, because that target is a lot more shieldy than it is flesh damage, or maybe benefiting from armor and corrosive damage. Beam Team works incredibly for mob clear in general, and it's super easy to experiment with and just have fun with a bit of variety. So I'm swapping between these two Capstones pretty often, and it's quite fun. To get down to this Capstone then, we're spending 5 points here on Vitriol. The first shot fired from Rafa's fully loaded magazine deals bonus corrosive damage. That's pretty cool because with the concept of Hot Slugger, well, I only have one shot in the magazine, right? So there's the corrosive bonus. You can see it highlighted on the buffs. It's gone and it's back, and it's gone and it's back. So every shot that I take, I'm getting that bonus corrosive. It's awesome synergy. Next we have 5 points into concentrated build-up. This is really important in the playstyle we will cover in the how to play this build section of the video. While aiming, Rafa gains bonus shock damage, and the longer you aim, the more this bonus shock damage builds up. So as I'm aiming, we're building up these stacks. You can see a different one building up there that's going up to 5 stacks, so let's mention that too, and how that actually synergizes. It comes from the specialization. It's this, in the zone. While aiming, the Vault Hunter gains increased gun damage and critical hit damage per second. So it goes up to 5, it's 25% increased gun damage and crit hit damage. This also is relevant again to our action skill damage because it's gaining half of that gun damage bonus. So you're doing a lot more damage by ADSing. You're getting bonus shock damage and just straight crit damage and gun damage. So it's very important when you're playing this build that you're just in ADS as much as possible. My advice for this is to, instead of hold to aim, just have it on toggle. That's what I'm doing. And then I no longer press that button and I just fire. And as you can see, I stay ADSing. Let's give an example where I run out of ammo. And then it reloads and automatically goes straight back to aiming. As you can see, the 5 stacks there, they stayed. However, you will lose the increased shock bonus. As you can see, it's at 6, it's at 9, it's at 12, 15, we're up to 18, we're at 20. See, I've reached max stacks. Eventually, one of these extra ammos is going to run out and I lose those stacking bonuses and we have to rebuild them up. Be aware of that. Now, these next 2 points are important because you might just have 1 point here instead of 2, like we'll talk about in a moment. But basically, you inflict status effects on enemies, gain increased action skill cooldown rate, and decreased action skill duration rate. So it helps us maintain our action skill duration, which we want to be going throughout an entire fight. You don't want to be in a boss fight and have your action skill ever run out, but this helps you maintain that. So the more points in this, the easier it is. Let's talk about the last section of the skill tree though. We have 5 points in Barrage, instead of 5 points in Everdrive, which are useless because of my setup. This is because we have Devastating Dancer as our class mod. This gives you double the Overdrive bonuses, which is amazing. Overdrive is giving you 10% increased damage, 25% increased movement speed. Because of this class mod, we double that. But the downside is as soon as your action skill ends, you lose Overdrive, where normally it would last a bit longer after. So since in the fight, our goal is to never run out of the action skill anyway, there's no downside, just increasing our damage. Awesome. Either way, because of this situation with the class mod, Everdrive is useless, so we'd rather put the points somewhere else, but it has to go into Barrage to get us down in the skill tree. This gives you increased splash damage while Overdrive is active, it's 35%, and in our testing, this is actually applying to Hot Slugger. I think it's because there's like technically some form of a circle there, like technically there's some kind of AoE if targets were on top of each other. We tested it with different splash damaging nodes before and after, and it was increasing the damage, so I think that's quite strange. I don't know if that's intended, but at least it means those 5 points are doing something. Otherwise, maybe you pull out a different weapon that does have better splash damage and benefits from the damage there. Anyway, next is Temeria. Of course, this gives us the increased gun damage and decreasing handling. You get up to 10 stacks. So your goal is to activate the action skill, let this build up to its max stacks, and maintain that as long as possible. The last point here that I've actually not got a point in is Soltado, which is a kill skill, doubling all your Overdrive bonuses. So it's interesting because you're getting way more damage and movement speed from that. But does this actually stack? If I were to put a point in this, I'd have 2 points in it, and the duration remains 8 seconds. It's not doubling it to 16. Whereas let's say you had an extra level in lateral plinking, the ricochet chance would go from 25 to 50. So why is this not changing? It could be that it's quadrupling all Everdrive bonuses, but it doesn't feel like it is. I'm not sure if this is working as intended, so for the moment, I've got my point in that second point here, just to help maintain the extra skill. But if it turns out that this is giving you increased damage for your Overdrive bonuses, it's well worth having that second point there, so fair warning on that. Right, that's a lot of explanations. We're now going to talk about specializations, where this is pretty ridiculous. The goal here was to have a true endgame build, like the best version I could possibly make, which means 40 specialization points is not enough. 60 is what you need to achieve this. Do not worry if you don't. 10 point sharpshooter and runner gets you to Daredevil, which is going to help your action skill cooldown rate. Awesome for getting it back up in general gameplay. Not relevant when we're actually dealing with a boss because you never drop it. But it gets you to these passives. I am a gun, 50% of the gun damage goes to the action skill damage. Amazing. And a honed mind. Our action skills gain that chance to critically hit. Have increased action skill critical hit damage. Awesome because if it ricochets and all the indirect damage there. As I said, we do have in the zone, which is really important to maintain our ADS gameplay, as I've already explained. And you would probably run Bullet Train, giving you a little bit of gun damage bonus while walking. But to maximize this build, we need to maintain our shield as much as possible. So 20 points in Survivor is going to help your max health and shield, but then it gets you to the best defense. The Vault Hunter gains increased damage dealt based on the fullness of their shield or health is 30% more. Since we're trying to maintain full shield as much as possible, this simply helps with that. So it will be a long-term goal for you. So let's now talk about the equipment, how that ties into the skill and specialization and the playstyle stuff. The most important thing here is Enrage. On use, grants an increase to all damage dealt by 30%. You do take 15% more damage for that duration. This is a special one though, a legendary, because it's got time dilation. It increases the duration of the rep kit, and reduces its cooldown. So basically, it's like I press the heal and get a big damage amp. You can see the buff there, that yin and yang symbol draining down. That's that 30% damage increase. So while that's going, I'm taking more damage, but I'm dealing a lot more damage. The whole idea is to kill a boss before we run out of action skill, so we want to make that as potent as possible. So I have to open a fight with this and then get this buff going again as soon as possible. So that's fantastic, but you can find Enrage on normal rep kits. As before, we have the all-important throwing knife. This is for the bonuses of damage and payload. So you throw it at a target for 5 seconds, they take 15% more damage. And then for penetrate or augment at the same time, it gives them this little skull symbol. It means that every shot, no matter where you hit them, is a crit. So you don't have to aim nearly as intently. Apparently this is going to get nerfed, or there's like rumors of that. We cannot find like a clear source at this moment. But people are claiming in their comments that this is going to get nerfed. We'll see. But for the moment, it's obviously insane, and so we're still running it. Next, we have the class mod. I have mentioned this before. It gives overdrive bonuses double effect, but then overdrive ends when the action skill ends instead of lasting like 12 seconds after. Devastating Dance is great. It's easy to farm from soul. Action skill cooldown rate's fantastic. Status effect application chance up, that's great too. There are a lot of bonuses that are going to be useful here. But in particular, you're going to want skill bonuses that matter. Temerio in particular. 1 level of Soldato means we don't have to put a point into it, which is obviously fantastic. So it's absolutely the one to go for. Next, we have the energy shield. There's a couple options here. I should grab the other one. The one that I'm using right now is Super Soldier though, because I'm using Hot Slugger. As I said, what it does is while you're at full shield, fire rate cool, movement speed cool, regens that 1 ammo. It's what's keeping me going, so I don't have to reload. Which means I don't lose the bonuses of concentrated build-up for an extended time. If you do not have Super Soldier and maintain full shield, you won't get the regen on the ammo, you'll reload as you fire, and you'll lose that bonus and have to build it up again. With this setup, it will be dropped occasionally, but for many shots in a row, you're getting that bonus shock damage and the stack of it in particular. So it's very potent. This is the best way we found to actually ensure that. As you can see, this can also roll with Siphon, so as you deal damage, you generate yourself overshield at times. Great for survivability. Your other option is, of course, the Fireworks Shield. This gives you like 3 chunks of armor, and is really cool because it comes with bundled. You kill enemies, that spawns missiles, and that indirectly damages enemies, and we get indirect bonuses. Missile Swarm's another concept. You lose an armor segment, and that launches missiles. Again, indirect damage. So there's good synergy here, absolutely, and I was using it. But it wasn't until Super Soldier that I could really maximize the concept of Hot Slugger and change the skill setup as well. So overall, I think Super Soldier is better. But, you know, Fireworks is really easy to get from Splash Zone and will work fantastically in the meantime. Lastly, we have the enhancement. Enhancements come in purple form, and you're going to find a lot of them that are going to be pretty cool, like Leaper or Piercer that increase chance to crit hit. But the most important one you can find is Sequencer. Guns with Jakobs licensed parts grant consecutive critical hits, which we're doing constantly, right? So it's incredibly impactful, especially in single target in a boss fight where you're building that up. The other thing that's insane is obviously the Ricochet. Your Jakobs parts guns have increased possible ricochets by 1, so that's obviously phenomenal for the build concept. If you get a legendary version of enhancement, you can have 2 of these special bonuses, and these are the 2 that you're going to want. Right, next up is the firmware. If you're running a gun build, Deadeye seems to be like the obvious meta. Gun accuracy whatever, gun critical damage very relevant for us. But then the 3rd level, every critical hit stacks 15% critical damage, up to 5 times. This is unbelievable. You're stacking the damage through lots of sources, like as well with our enhancement. Right now it just feels like everyone's having to run Deadeye if you're running a gun build. It's that good. So 3 levels of that is kind of non-negotiable. The other 2 levels I actually think is debatable. You've got Trick Shot, which gives you the gun reload speed, which is nice, but importantly the gun crit damage, an extra 10% there, fantastic. But the other one that I really like is Goo JFC, really weird name. Action skill cooldown rate 10%, action skill damage up by 15%. Remember, our cannons are doing great damage, indirect, ricochet, increasing that damage is also fantastic and is a really good option. So this is completely viable as a second option if this is the firmware you currently have access to in whatever combo you need to. The main thing here is Deadeye is like necessary, then you choose between Trick Shot and the Goo one, in my opinion. But yeah, that's the build and how everything works together to synergize. Here's a quick rundown of generally how you play. You ADS as much as possible to maintain all the different bonuses from that and build up. You obviously want to hit a target as much as possible, but not in a non-critical zone. If you need to aim to make sure you're getting the crits, obviously that's great, but by throwing the knife, we guarantee the crits wherever we're shooting them, which is important. This also increases the damage you're dealing to them, so every 5 seconds, you throw a knife. As you use your action skill, you're going to be building up stacks of damage. We can see it at the bottom there. So it builds up to 10 stacks and we're getting that bonus. As we reactivate that, we double the crit strike chance and damage. So once we let everything build up, once everything's charged, that's when I press that button and start to go to town on a target while maintaining the knife throws as much as possible whenever we need to reapply that buff. As you can see in the gameplay, it's incredibly effective. And when you get those Ricochet procs building into itself, you get unbelievable burst damage. The build overall is absolutely devastating when it comes to flesh damage in particular, but you can do fantastic work against armor with corrosive damage. We've got lots of that in the build. If you're dealing with a super shielded enemy, then you can swap to beam team. And in general, you play to maintain and look after your shield. Don't forget that you can make that change in the skill tree out of the gun damage into shield barrier if you're having difficulty maintaining your shield. Otherwise, in some clips, you will see me swap between Rainbow Vomit and Hot Slugger based on the situation. Hot Slugger is going to build up a massive damage bonus when there's adds in the fight. If there are no adds, then it's not going to be remotely as good. And so the Rainbow Shotgun can actually be the better option. If the enemy you're dealing with is dealing some really annoying mechanics where you just can't avoid getting hit, then also the Rainbow Shotgun will do work because you can maintain the ADS for longer than Hot Slugger because you have 6 shots instead of 1 before you have to reload, and that goes a long way. But if there are adds and you're able to get the stacking damage bonus of Hot Slugger, then you gotta use it. It's so strong. But yeah, that's my overview of this super pushed version of the Ricochet Rafa. I hope this gives you everything you need to know, and I've explained everything as best as I can. If you guys have any more information, advice, or tips, let us know in the comments. But it's about time I look at something other than Ricochet Rafa, I think. Please do drop a like if you liked it. It's been a lot of work. Until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.